Have you ever wondered why the exact same action puts you behind bars in one country, but gets a total pass in another? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're building an absolute bedrock foundation of criminology terminology. Think of this as your ultimate cheat sheet for understanding exactly how the justice system categorizes the world. Because honestly, almost every theory, every case study, and every major current affairs debate in this field completely rests on getting these core definitions right. Our main goal today is to explain everything clearly so you walk away with a rock-solid grasp of these concepts. We've got 5 sections lined up for you. Section 1, What is criminology? Section 2, Defining crime precisely. Section 3, Classifying by nature. Section 4, Classifying by intensity. And finally, Section 5, the 3 C's. Let's get right to it. Section 1. What is criminology? The discipline of accusation. At its absolute basic linguistic root, criminology just means the study of accusation. It comes from combining the Latin word crimen, which means accusation, with the Greek suffix logia, meaning the study of. This term was actually coined way back in 1885 by an Italian law professor named Raffaele Garofalo.
But to really wrap our heads around what this discipline actually does, we have to look to Edwin Sutherland, a guy frequently called the father of American criminology. He beautifully frames this entire field as the body of knowledge regarding crime as a social phenomenon. What he's telling us is that criminology isn't just the day-to-day tactical stuff of catching the bad guys. It's the rigorous study of a highly complex, constantly evolving social organism.
Sutherland expands on this idea to show that criminology covers a complete, continuous loop of human behavior. It's the study of how laws get made in the first place, how those exact same laws inevitably get broken, and finally, how society organizes itself to react to that law breaking. It's an endless cycle that pulls from sociology, psychology, law, and biology all at once.
So now that we've got a handle on the broad discipline and its continuous loop, we have to ask a question that sounds super simple, but actually requires a highly precise answer. What exactly is a crime?
Section 2. Defining crime precisely. Legal and social boundaries. To define crime precisely, we rely on Paul Tappan's incredibly strict legalistic definition. Tappan states that a crime is an intentional act or a failure to act that breaks a criminal law, is committed without any legal defense or excuse, meaning it wasn't self-defense, for instance, and results in the state penalizing the person. Notice just how narrow this is. Intent actually matters, a specific statute has to exist on the books, and absolutely only the state can apply the label. It leaves pretty much zero room for subjective debate.
But wait, to see the full picture here, we really have to consider the sociological angle championed by scholars like Thorsten Selin. This view reminds us that crime is also a violation of society's conduct norms, based on our shared community expectations of right and wrong. And this perspective is just incredibly useful. It perfectly explains why selling alcohol was a massive crime in the 1920s during Prohibition, but it's perfectly legal today. Our social values evolved, and the laws eventually followed suit.
Section 3. Classifying by nature, the moral divide. Let's break this down clearly by pitting 2 crucial Latin categories against each other. First, we have mala in se, which literally means wrong in themselves. We're talking about acts that are universally recognized as inherently evil, like murder or theft. Even if there were no written laws, humanity across virtually all cultures instinctively knows these things are deeply wrong. On the flip side, we have mala prohibita, meaning wrong because prohibited. Think about jaywalking or parking violations. They don't carry any inherent immorality. If the law changed tomorrow, society wouldn't feel some deep moral outrage over an expired parking meter. Understanding this divide is a game changer, especially when we debate things like drug policies. Are we arguing about a mala in se offense or a mala prohibita one?
Section 4. Classifying by intensity, the ladder of severity.
Okay, so the justice system uses a rigorous 3-tier ladder to measure the intensity of a crime. Right at the top is the felony. This is the most serious category, punishable by more than a year in prison or even death for severe crimes like armed robbery or murder. Moving down to the middle, we have the misdemeanor. These are less serious, usually landing you under a year in a local jail or just a fine for things like petty theft or a simple assault. And at the very bottom is the infraction. These are minor violations like traffic tickets, which usually just end in a fine and leave no lasting criminal record. Memorizing this ladder is essential, guys, because this severity tier dictates absolutely everything downstream, which court you go to, what your procedural protections are, and of course, your final punishment.
Section 5. The 3 C's. Unlinking confusing terms.
Now we're going to equip you with arguably the most empowering tool in this whole explainer, confidently separating three terms that get constantly mashed together in casual conversation. First up is criminality. The key thing to understand here is that criminality is not an act at all. Scholars define it as a relatively stable individual trait or psychological disposition. It's basically a general willingness to use force, fraud, or deception to get what you want at someone else's expense. Think of that person who would happily lie just to cut to the front of a line. So, criminality can absolutely exist in someone who has never been convicted of a legal crime in their entire life.
Next is criminal behavior. This is the observable layer of actual physical conduct that stems directly from that inner disposition we just talked about. It's the exact moment that internal willingness turns into physical action, and this is vital. This conduct may or may not actually be formally labeled as illegal, depending entirely on how the laws happen to be written in that specific time and place.
To really lock this into your memory, let's just follow this simple chronological chain. Step 1 is criminality. That's the internal psychological disposition. That dark disposition then leads to step 2, criminal behavior, the actual observable conduct out there in the real world. And finally, society occasionally steps in and applies step 3, crime, which is the formal legal construct and label placed upon some of those behaviors.
So, leaving you with that incredibly powerful distinction between a psychological disposition, an observable behavior, and a legal label, we have to ask ourselves one final question. If the exact same behavior can be slapped with the label of crime in one country, but be perfectly legal in another, are we truly punishing the physical act itself? Or are we actually just trying to punish the underlying disposition of criminality? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you hear someone labeled a criminal.